Hello, my name is Youri BenadjaoudThe, and I'm an undergraduate at the University of Oregon, majoring in psychology, neuroscience, and human physiology. The following research was provided via the Computational Social Neuroscience Lab within the Department of Psychology under the direction of Robert Chavez. This project was a large collaborative effort with senior members of the lab, graduate students, and undergraduate students. This poster is an analysis on a subset of material from this research project. Past research has indicated that the medial prefrontal cortex is quite prevalent in self-referential and social cognition tasks. Yet due to extensive functional and anatomical overlap within the region, it is difficult to dissociate social processes, such as when one thinks of themselves versus thinking of others. The current study utilizes structural connectivity to other regions of the brain to further differentiate self and other activity patterns within this region and their assumed socio-behavioral qualities. As a whole, we were attempting to construct a random forest model to predict activation values within an overlapping region of the MPFC that would differentiate self versus other responses. We do this by using connectivity pattern weights obtained via diffusion tensor imaging. With a sample of 114 participants from the study, we measured brain activation to self and others using a trait-judgement fMRI task paradigm. Using a fixed effects model, we established where self-activity occurred over baseline and where other activity occurred over baseline, and then use this information to create a seed region where these two clusters overlap within the MPFC. Via probabilistic tractography, we calculated which regions of the brain from a 100 parcel mask were connected to the seed region of interest. From the 100 parcels, 14 were identified and selected because of their connectivity profile to the region. Average activity was calculated for each subject for self over baseline and other over baseline within the seed region. These values were used separately as outcome variables in which the streamlined pattern weights from the 14 parcels served as predictors in a random forest model using cross-validated machine learning methods. We evaluated whether the accuracy of these models showed that the structural connectivity patterns were more predictive of self-activity or other activity using out-of-sample prediction. Figure 1 shows the correlation between the predicted functional values and the functional MRI values when participants were thinking of themselves. Figure 2 shows the correlation between the predicted functional values and the functional MRI values when participants were thinking of others. The variable importance of each of the 14 parcels was brain mapped for both the self over baseline and other over baseline model. Within the self model, the frontal pole seemed to be relevant in predicting variability in functional activity, whereas within the other model, the lateral temporal gyrus seemed to be relevant in predicting variability in functional activity. This schematic provides insight as to which parcels were most responsible in predicting functional variability within the seed region. While the effect size of these two statistical analyses is difficult to interpret, we can recognize that the regularized regression model predicted the variability of functional data better in the self paradigm compared to the other paradigm. This indicates that overlapping activity for self-other processing can be differentiated based on connectivity patterns to other parts of the brain. Structural connectivity between the MPFC to other brain regions may aid in dissociating between self versus other activity within the overlap of the seed region. In conclusion, we can state that our machine learning algorithm can better predict variability of fMRI activation values based on structural connectivity when participants thought of themselves compared to another participant. Due to the fact that the self was better predicted within the model, it could be possible that self-activity is strong on more distributed regions in comparison to other activity. Inferences such as these may provide insight to the functional and structural operations of human self-referential processing and social cognition tasks. We recognize that the interpretation of models such as these is not straightforward, and that we cannot simply state that connectivity defines self-other differentiation. This is, however, a strong proof of concept that machine learning algorithms can utilize structural connectivity values to predict functional activation. We intend to explore this idea further and find manners in which to use structural connectivity to differentiate perceptual categories like self and other more distinctly.